How's it going, everybody? UG here, and today we've got a Ret Paladin PvP guide for the War Within. So in this video, I'm going to be going over everything. First, we'll cover the Paladin side talents and the PvP talents, because those are always going to be the same. Then, I'm going to go into two separate sections. One entirely about Templars, and the other entirely about Herald. I'll be going over the best builds and rotations for each individual hero tree. And after that, I'll be giving you some helpful macros and add-ons, and finally what I think are going to be the best 3 comps for Ret. So right off the bat, we've got the Paladin side. This is going to be the standard for the most part, but depending on preferences, you can actually change between Vengeful Wrath and Divine Purpose when playing Herald. I personally prefer Divine Purpose since all around more consistent, and if you're playing Templar, you pretty much always play it. Vengeful can however be really strong in combination with On-She from Herald. The only thing is it's super situational. It gives you a good execute, but is a bit hard to get there. I think Divine Purpose is a bit overall better, but if you want the chance to instant execute someone when they hit 35%, Vengeful Wrath can be fun. The last change you can make is dropping Bop for a number of different things depending on the matchups. Since you won't need Bop into double magic teams, you can completely drop the talent. Into SPs and other dot/poison comps, you can go Cleanse Toxins. If you're trying to cleave or pressing Divine Storm a ton, you can go Light Forge Blessing. Then into everything else, you'll probably just go Touch of Light. But that's kind of the end of the changes you can make on the Paladin side. Next, we have the PvP talents, which haven't changed at all since Dragonflight. Every game we go Blessing of Sanctuary and or Reckoning. Then in our last slot, we go Blessing of Spellwarding into double magic teams, or Luminescence into everything else. You can also go Searing Glare into double melee teams for a way to peel your teammates, and lastly you could go Hollow Ground. Since Consecrated Blades is a passive now, you'll actually get some good value out of it into things like mages and DKs. Now let's talk about Templar. Templar is the big burst hero tree and is probably the best one currently unless it gets nerfed. Its big thing is Hammer of Light, a 5-cost holy power spell that hits super hard. Pretty much our goal is to make this hit as hard as possible and hit it as many times in the window as possible. For the hero tree itself, the choice nodes, I think Zealous Vindication is the best, Sanctification is the best, and the other one is sort of situational, but I overall think Unrelenting Charger is a bit better and more consistent. Now the talents themselves, it's pretty much the standard build we used back in DF. We go Final Rec, but instead of Executioners, we're going to go Divine Auxiliary because it's really good holy power generator for getting out even more Hammer of Lights. We then get Burned Ash for a little bit of extra damage on our goes, then the combination of Expurgation and Holy Flames for bigger Hammer of Lights. The most different change is for this build we're going to be going Crusading Strikes. Even though Templar Strikes hits a lot harder, this gives us more potential holy power generation on our goes, which can allow us to get more Hammer of Lights off. There are a couple changes you could make to this talent tree. The first one would be to drop either Vanguard's Momentum or 1 point in Zealot's favor to get Consecrated Grounds. Consecrated Grounds is actually pretty good since Blade of Justice drops Consecration just by default. It gives us an extra range slow to catch our targets. Another change you can go is to drop Divine Wrath or Radiant Glory. Divine Wrath doesn't actually work when playing Radiant Glory, so you need to do one or the other. This gives you a bit more consistent burst every 30 seconds rather than your super big burst every 2 minutes. It's pretty good with Templar, but can definitely reduce your pressure in the opener significantly, and also at the 2-minute mark, which is your kill window a lot of the time. I think right now it's going to be up to preference for whichever you take, but overall I think normal 2 minutes wings is a little bit better since you still get the short mini goes from Orb Reckoning anyways, time it right, so you aren't getting as much value out of those short mini goes. So next let's talk about the rotation for Templar. So for our general rotation, the easiest way to talk about it is a priority list. So if this button is available in this situation, you will always use it, but if it's on CD, then you use this. For Ret, there's going to be 2 different versions of the rotation, one for if you're in melee range, and one for if you're in ranged. We're going to start with melee since that's where you want to be most of the time. The general rotation is pretty simpler. Templars with 4+ holy power and Judgment debuff, Templars with 3+ holy power and DP proc, Blade of Justice, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, and that's it. Generally, if you follow this, you'll be doing the most damage possible. Next, when you're at range, it's pretty similar with just some slight changes. So first off, it's Templars with 5 holy power, Judgment, Templars with 4+ holy power, Blade of Justice, Hammer of Wrath. The reason for this is you want to get in melee range as fast as possible, so Judgment is one of your highest priority moves since it slows and also gives you a speed boost. Now onto the burst rotation. For our burst, there's one super important little tip that honestly might be a bug, but makes this spec so much better. So Hammer of Light interacts with Crusade in an interesting way. When you use Hammer of Light, with less than 10 stacks, the damage calculates the stacks it gains before actually doing the damage. So if you have 5 stacks and use Hammer of Light, it will deal damage as if you were at 10 stacks before using this. I think it's because the damage is technically delayed a bit because of the animation, but this is a massive buff for the build. That means all we have to do is get to 5 stacks before we can actually start doing max damage with Hammer of Light. So for our burst, we only have to get over 5 stacks to actually start. So for our 2-minute go, we get 5 Holy Power, Wings, Templars, Blade of Justice, Templars, then get to 2 Holy Power. Now we Wake, Hammer of Light, Final Wreck, Blade of Justice, Hammer of Light, Toll, Hammer of Light, then just do our standard rotation, replacing Templars with Hammer of Light. If you ever get a DP proc, we just send the bonus Hammer of Light instantly. For the 30-second go, it's pretty much the same. Get 2+ Holy Power, Wake, Hammer of Light, General Rotation, but replace Templars with Hammer of Light. Then finally, for the 60-second go, it's the same as the Wings go without the ramp. Just get 2 Holy Power, Wake, Hammer of Light, Final Wreck, Blade of Justice, Hammer of Light, Toll, General Rotation with Hammer of Light, replacing Templars. Now that's about it for Templars, so next let's talk about Herald. For the hero talents themselves, you're going to want to go Gleaming Rays, Illumine, and On Shi. On the red side, there's a ton of different things you can go. This is going to be the standard stuff you can always take. Then there are a number of different ways you can go with the other talents, depending on how you want to play / what you're playing against. You've got about 3 points to mess around with, 5 if you also drop Expiation or Holy Flames, but I think both are worth taking most of the time. So the first option is to add a cleave option to our gameplay. So what we're going to do is add some Divine Storm talents. So the first one is Tempest of the Lightbringer, which pretty much just buffs our Divine Storm by 20%. Then we get Penitence and Burning Crusade, which buffs all of our dots, including Dawnlight, Wake by 5%, and Divine Storm by 5%. Then, a big part of this is the right side of the Herald tree, which causes our Divine Storm to crit more often, do burn damage when it does crit, and more importantly, have a 15% chance to do 30% extra damage. All this combined makes it so Divine Storm deals nearly as much damage as Templars and does insane damage whenever 2 or more people are stacked. You can play this build every game if you want to, but especially into melee cleaves and other comps where there's a chance to cleave. Doublecaster is potentially the only comp you wouldn't want to play it, since they usually play so far away from each other. For those comps, you can go more of a Templar-centric build where you go Divine Wrath, Final Reckoning, and Penitence. This extends the duration of Crusade, it gives you a bit of extra burst with Final Wreck, and also still buffs your dot damage by 10%. You could potentially drop Holy Flame for Burning Crusade for more dot / wake damage instead of the 3% damage buff during Expurgation. Generally, for Herald, I think Templar Strikes is better than Crusading Strikes since it hits harder and gives you another dot that's buffed by all of your dot talents, which also increases the proc chance of your On Shi. But that's about it for the talents. Next up is our rotation. So kind of the same with Templar, we're going to have 2 separate rotations, one for range, one for melee, and then we're going to be going over the burst rotations. So just like with Templars, we're going to be doing it in a priority list, and we're going to be having a melee one and a ranged one. And then we're going to be going over the rotation for the burst itself. So our rotation is going to be Templar / Divine Storm with 4+ Holy Power and Judgment debuff, Templar / Divine Storm with 3+ Holy Power and a DP proc, Judgment with no debuffs up, Hammer of Wrath on Shi proc, Templar Strikes, Blade of Justice, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath. Generally, if you follow this, you'll be doing the most damage possible. Next, for when at range, it's pretty similar, just some slight changes. So first off, it's now Templars with 5 Holy Power, Judgment, On Shi, Hammer of Wrath, Templars with 4+ Holy Power, Blade of Justice, and Hammer of Wrath. The reasoning is the same as with Templar. You want to get Judgments out as much as possible since it gives you a speed boost and also slows your enemies. So now let's talk about the burst. So for the most part, we don't have the most burst, but you can still get a significant amount of damage off during Wake goes. So first off, we have the Wings go. First off, get 5 Holy Power, pop Wings, Templars, Toll, get to 10 stacks, plus 3 Holy Power if you're playing Final Wreck. Use it, then Templars, Wake, Templars, Templars, then follow the general rotation from there. You can save the Wake go for whenever you need damage after being at 10 stacks, so you can ramp up instantly, then go Hodge, pop Wake for burst. For 30 seconds go, it's pretty simple. Just get 2 Holy Power, Wake, Templars, Templars, general rotation. And for 60-second go, it's the same as the 30-second go, but before you Wake, if you're running it, you Final Wreck, and after your second Templars, you Toll. So it's going to be 2 Holy Power, Final Wreck, Wake, Templars, Templars, Toll, Templars, general rotation. And that's it for the rotation. Next up, we've got our stat prio. It's the same as it's been for, you're going to want to get the most verse possible, then mastery, then haste. So for ring enchants, go verse enchant, and for weapon, go either authority of radiant power or Oathsworn's tenacity. Now we have some helpful add-ons and macros. So first off, for add-ons, the most important thing for a paladin is going to be big debuffs. This lets you see CC and other things on your teammates much easier than with basic loadout. The next most important one is technically a macro. It's framesort. This add-on lets you organize your party order so it's always in the same order and lets you create macros to target specific roles. So for example, here's a macro that lets you sank your healer always. But then if you want to make one for your DPS, you just swap the healer part with DPS 1. It's super helpful, especially in shuffle, since you never really need to think about what button to press, since your parties will never change and you're always going to be targeting that specific role when you use a button. With this, I recommend making macros for everything. Freedom, bop, natural bop, lay on hands, sank, sack, wog, flash, literally everything. The next add-on I recommend is getting either Tell Me When or Weak Arrows to track some of your stacking buffs. This lets you make things like Ore of Reckoning, Anshi, and Arbiter much easier to track, but that's about it for add-ons and macros. The last thing we have to talk about are potential 3s comps. So it's kind of hard to tell what exactly is going to be the most OP comp, especially since there's still balance changes happening constantly, but I think your best bet overall is probably going to be Ret Warrior, as it has been for the last 3 expansions. War is just really good and it synergizes super well with Ret. The next comp is probably going to be Cupid for the same reason. And lastly, I think Ret DK could be really strong. DK can set up some massive AoE goes for you to do. The spec also just does infinite damage. I can see it being a pretty strong comp. Some other comps that could be really good are Ret DH, Ret Feral, Ret Rogue with any spec, Ret Demo, and maybe Ret Windwalker. And I think that's probably it for comps that I think are worth trying at least. Maybe some other things are going to pop up that are going to be insane. But yeah, that's about it for comps. And that's everything. Expect another guide next patch when the new talents come out. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Peace.